Good morning, everyone. Um, I'll start asking questions like a very curious teenager would ask a question to an expert, on a subject that many of us, what we understand is not actually the truth. So here, I think I would do I would act like a seeker of knowledge to understand a lot of things about one of the most pressing things that we need to do in India, something that governments, whatever it be it at the center, local, or at the federal level, ignore completely. So, my first question to Mr. Jung is, it's behind all this handsome exterior, is there a wild person inside?
No, I think there's a wild person, Ullekh, in every one of us. It's just that you've kept it hidden from the public.
Yeah. So now let's get into the wild part of it. So, what is it that drove you from your, laid back or very active in some ways, both a combination of laid back and active lifestyle and life, as a cricketer, to get into what was behind this call of the wild that you decided to take a retreat along with the family?
Are you saying that the cricketer's life is laid back? I mean, it is so full of pressure and
it's a
tension.
mix of both,
Is it? Sorry?
Yeah, I think so.
No, I think it's a beautiful life. I think it would be wrong to say that it's laid back. I think even a cricketer's life is so filled with not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow and uncertainty. And especially in the days where you didn't have money. So that was a beautiful life, the amateur life of cricket, that I was probably one of the last generation to have played that. So that was a beautiful life. I would never run that down. But an illness took me away from cricket, and I didn't play much. I was in hospital for 2.5 years. And when I came out, I realized that I didn't want to be part of a dog-eat-dog world where I couldn't control my own future. So I decided that I would go into conservation, understand what conservation is. It took me like 40 years.
What drew you to conservation? What drew you to?
No, it's just the wilderness, like it draws all of us. So wildlife draws us in, and then we suddenly understand the conflicts within the system, and then we become conservationists. You don't start being a conservationist. No, it's impossible to understand what conservation itself is. So wildlife, elephants, I loved elephants. I mean, elephants are so human, more human than us. And then as I spent more and more time in the bush, I realized that even birds have a life, even insects have a life, even every animal has a life and must be given equal opportunity like humans. That is not given. And that is where we as a people, and not just India, I think a lot of countries have actually failed their countries, have actually failed all the living creatures that live within that eco-biosphere. And that's what I was trying to tell you, that it's not about us, it's about everyone, about everything.
So, how long have you been in conservation? How long have you been a conservationist?
So I gave up cricket in '83, and from '85 onwards I've been a wildlifeist, an ecotourism operator, and a conservationist.
So can you tell me about that life? How do you define this part of your life as a conservationist, and also what are the key learnings, and what are the learnings that you want to share with people here, and also those things that you try to share with governments and did not find that you've been able to strike a chord with them?
All right, so that's I mean, it might take a whole book to explain that to you.
You can go on.
No, it starts off beautifully for all of us. Like if you go, Kerala's got such stunning areas, such eco-biospheres, you could just go there and retire for the rest of your life. They're so beautiful on the outside, but only when you get in and you start living in a village, do you actually realize the truth of what is happening behind the curtains. And when my wife and I first moved to Mangala, which was I mean, you come now, you'll see it. It's really the most beautiful valley, surrounded by forests, and you've got elephants coming in, you've got deer, you've got bear, you've got tiger. Now, all those issues that make it so beautiful are actually huge issues of conflict. And then we realized over a period of time, I mean, it took me like 2-3 years to actually break the barrier, which is still difficult. And then actually start understanding as to what is happening in that village. And what is happening in that village is quite terrifying. When I got there in the 80s, they were the forgotten people of India. They didn't even have basic amenities. There was nothing there for them. Now, what does that mean? That means that when India woke up, that its wildlife was being shot. What it did was, it drew an arbitrary line. And it said, and I call it God's line. And on one side of God's line is your tigers and your elephants and your forests and your jungles and your everything that is wild. And on the other side of God's line is the humans, the cattle, the cows and the buffaloes and the, name it, you know, the hens and goats and sheep, farming, cultivation, bore wells. So that's on one side, and this is on one side. Now, when a conservationist would look at, say, the Mangla Valley, and this is where I think we failed. When a conservationist would look at, say, Mangla Valley or any of the national parks, or even any of your cities, he would look at it from an overall perspective where all the animals, all God's living creatures would be given an equal opportunity to survive with happiness, or like a win-win situation for every living creature. But that doesn't happen, because humans just take so much away that finally when, and the demand on the human was so much, and the human was not even getting basic amenity, and therefore he was going back into the forest and becoming a poacher and a smuggler, that the twain was not meeting. So what happened with the Wildlife Protection Act? It's not a Wildlife Conservation Act. We desperately needed a Wildlife Conservation Act. 1950s, we lost 90% of our wildlife. The 1960s, suddenly the government woke up and said, what do we do? So they went across to these autocratic officers and said, hang on, give us a law. So they gave the Wildlife Protection Act. The Wildlife Protection Act, what did it do? It drew this line and said, if you cross this line, told us humans, we'll kill you, or we'll shoot you, or we'll arrest you, you're a poacher, you're a smuggler. I mean, where am I supposed to go? There's no revenue there. I've been living in the forest or off the forest for the past 5,000 years. Where am I supposed to go? No answer. Don't you dare come in. Our tribes were thrown out. Where could they go? They didn't even know how to cultivate. They didn't know how to do any business. So they came out, they started getting drunk. And then government said, oh, no, that's not right. We should bring them back in. So the tribes are being bounced around like a tennis ball. We don't know what we are doing, because the whole mindset was that this line has to be protected. The fact should have been that this line has to be conserved. Everything overall should have been looked at and said, let's find a win-win situation. That was not done. A win-win situation was not found for the cattle, because now they don't have a place to graze. All the lands have been converted to fields, yes. Somebody's cousin or the other has taken it. Where do they go? They go into the forest. They go into the forest. They get killed. And the moment they get killed, their carcass is poisoned by an irate farmer or owner who says, how can the tiger kill? And he takes fertilizer, puts it in the stomach. The tiger dies. So similarly, if you're going to protect, at least put up a fence. If you're going to protect, put up something which the animal can't cross and the humans can't cross on the other side. That wasn't done. So there is zero conservation. The whole meaning of conservation is a dialogue. It is a dialogue where every single living creature has equal right to speak. No one is speaking on behalf of the wilderness. They're protecting them. No one is speaking on behalf of the humans. No one. So the animals, like the other day we lost a child to a tribal child. A lady, she lost her son to a tiger. What's the answer? Today, our laws, our mindset, our exclusionary mindset of our officers, they don't have an answer, because they've excluded these people from the equation of conservation. 5,000, no, maybe pre-British, when the monarchy was there, the forests were managed by the local villagers. The kings would use the local villagers to manage the forest produce, to manage the local forests. And therefore, if something happened in the forest, like a tiger would kill someone, the villagers would get together and say, yeah, I know, just bad luck. It's like you and I driving tomorrow to the airport, we have an accident and one of us dies. The world understands. Similarly for the tribes, similarly for the people living around the forest, they would have understood. But when you put this God's line in, and you said, now you get out, and don't come in again, there became a line of conflict. And that line of conflict can only be overcome through conservation, through dialogue, through trust, through respect, through talking to each other, through becoming transparent, through becoming answerable. So none of these officers want to be answerable to the locals, right? So they came up with the Wildlife Protection Act. There is zero conservation in the Wildlife Protection Act. They came up with the Forest Act. Where is the conservation in the Forest Act? Grow these trees, do this, do that, and that's not conservation. Conservation is grow the trees so that all of us can live happily together, so that there can be a symbiosis, there can be a relationship with the forest and the people and the animals and everyone together. There's no dialogue.
Now you're talking about a very profound idea that goes beyond, reconciliation or protection, but not even conservation, but you're talking about compassion and dialogue with the tribal people, and also giving equal space as the humans have to the rest of the flora and fauna. So do you, as a conservationist, do you work with the tribals?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I don't know if it's applicable here in Kerala, but in the areas that I've worked in, dialogue has become extremely difficult. Because my manager, who's been with me now for 30 years, cannot go to the houses of 70% of the people in the village. He cannot enter their house because of caste. So when you don't have dialogue and caste is coming in the way, religion doesn't come in the way. Religion never comes in the way of dialogue. I don't think it's ever come in the way. No matter what the politicians say, religion does not stop dialogue, or does not stop trust, or does not stop relationship building. Caste does. So what happens when my manager can't sit on the same table as that member of that caste and that member of that caste? There is no dialogue. If there's no dialogue, there's no trust. There's no trust, there's no respect. There's no respect, there is going to be no win-win solution for everyone, because no one knows what the solution is. So it is such a good question. Conservation will address the issue of every conflict in the area, including the village. Female infanticide, dowry harassment, caste issues. Conservation has to address that, because conservationists, supposing we had a conservation law where the forest department was supposed to get all the villagers or representative of all the villagers onto one table and find a solution. If they were forced by law, they would be forced to earn respect. They would be forced to talk to all of us. They are not today.
But what kind of changes, amendments to the law that you recommend?
We need to make the law inclusionary. Right now it's exclusive. So I was talking about this God's line. What happens with God? No God that I know knows how to conserve. Gods don't come down and conserve. They can protect you. They can bless you. You can ask them for wealth or health or whatever. They'll give you that. But no God, in no religion do I know who's going to come down and conserve. He doesn't conserve. So and if you look at gods on earth, we are gods on earth. Humans decide who will live and who will die. And now with the virus, and now with all these issues that are coming. I saw Anand Narasimhan the other day speaking on the Pfizer vaccine, that it was designed or allegedly designed to actually create further problems. So now that humans decide who's going to live and who's going to die, we are gods. And if we play God, we have the ability to destroy, but not the ability to create. And therefore we can never conserve.
Do you see any kind of lopsided, flawed efforts? I'm talking about those existing efforts by the government, and do you see flawed priorities, that are rampant currently?
No, I wouldn't blame the government here. I don't think it's the government's fault, because if you actually see what happened in the early 1970s when the Wildlife Protection Act was given to us, that act in itself should have been a temporary act for 5 or 10 years, leading to a conservation act. But because it didn't do that, the mindset of the official who then, like a young range forest officer or a DFO, when he goes in for training, he is now trained to be God. He is not trained to talk to me. Like a revenue inspector or like a village accountant will be trained to talk to me. He will be trained to give us solutions. The forest department is not done, they don't do that. They are trained to be exclusionary, and therefore when they land up, the mindset is, no, this is the best. We will play God, we will decide who is right and who is wrong, and therefore whatever we say is right. But what you say is not based on ground level reality, because you've lost the connect. So I don't blame governments here. Someone needs to pick up the tab and say, all right, let all these laws and let all these departments remain, but on top of them, let's just put in a small conservation department. Let them report to this conservation department. And this conservation department will oversee whether they are doing conservation or they're just merely protecting or merely growing a forest or merely doing something which is being sold as conservation. So I think we need to bring in a conservation department, bring in a conservation act which oversees your industrial act, your pollution act, your every conceivable act there is, and that big boss who sits there says, no, conservationally I think we need to look at this aspect. I need you to address this issue. Please go back, address it and come back. So over a period of 10 years or 20 years, then we can actually think of coming in with conservation laws in the forest department, in pollution department, in industrial departments. But it won't happen immediately.
Yeah, now we come to a question that's very pertinent, which is like, development, yes, but development for whom? And it's not an area where we have a black and white answer. Like, Government of India, all the state governments want tourism promotion, and then they extend the promotion of tourism to the wild, almost on the margins of what we call as forest, or sometimes even deep inside. And as a result, there is resistance, there are protests that happen. But these protests tend to be, if you look at Chhattisgarh, there is a problem of Maoists, which has happened over the last several decades, and throughout the what they call the Red Corridor, it's people's resistance to certain efforts, very concerted efforts by certain elements, vested interests to encroach. But it maybe they lose the track, they go astray. Same way the government makes the mistake of seeing it only from a political point of view. And now I want to come to this question about a specific incident that happened last year in Wayanad, where some people took a march to a particular area in Wayanad, and they wanted Rahul Gandhi to take up the issue of this conservation or encroachment into economic, the very fragile economic ecosystem that we have, because all these things degrade our fragile ecosystem. So how do you weigh in on this?
Well, thank you for that. That's really actually opened up a plethora of answers here that I will need to give. Let's address the issue of Maoists. There is really no need for a Maoist system to interfere or to actually come into administration. The need is only felt by the local people when they feel that they are not getting what is their deserved right. And if the government was answerable, if the local departments were giving basic amenities, then the Maoist movement itself would have died. It would never even have taken off, because that's what the Maoist thrives on, the failures and weakness, perceived failures and weaknesses of government. Without that, the Maoist is nothing. So that's something, the whole issue of the Maoist movement should have woken us up and made us realize that we are failing somewhere for these people to plug themselves in, and that is that we do not have a conservation law. Had we had a conservation law and had everyone being part of the solution, then even if there is a drought tomorrow, the solution comes from the village. You don't need an outsider to come and take advantage of that. If an elephant comes and destroys my field, the solution will come from my brothers and sisters and cousins in the village and the panchayat. So, for compensation, I don't need to look out. If I don't got compensation, I don't need to get angry, because the village would have then come up with me. So that is something that's, even now it's not too late. I think the fact that the Maoists are there is something that should awaken us, open our eyes into finding a conservation solution. Now, again, Rahul Gandhi's issue, okay? That is such, forget the political issue. It doesn't matter to me whether it's Rahul Gandhi or it is some other leader from some other party. That's not the point. The point is, what were the people fighting for? I think the people were fighting for the ban on commercial construction and commercialization of, again, another arbitrary line called the eco-sensitive zone. Okay, what is the eco-sensitive zone? Eco-sensitive zone basically is that we cannot control the animals in the forest because we haven't done the fencing, or whatever reason. Animals are going to move up to 15 kilometers outside the forest. You don't say anything. It's there right away. What do you mean there right away? I live there. My fields are there. My children are there. My education is there. My child cannot go out of the house if he gets killed by a panther or a tiger or an elephant. Hey, find me a solution for that before you throw this eco-sensitive zone on my face. So I think the fact that these people, and I think they're the only people in India who've actually woken up and said, hang on guys, there's something we believe is wrong. Now, I mean, I can always say that I don't believe in it, but the government might not change. But the fact that a whole community, whole villages have woken up, should have opened the eyes of every state, should have opened the eyes of the center, saying, what is the actual point? It's not Rahul Gandhi. I mean, no one's really going to agitate and destroy Rahul Gandhi's office because Supreme Court order or some eco-sensitive zone. He's got nothing to do with it. But the fact is that the eco-sensitive zone is so draconian. It is stopping commercialization of, say, 15 kilometers. Where will they go? If there is no revenue for these local people, if there is no access to revenue for them, and if their farmlands are going to be destroyed, where are they going to go? Most of them don't even have buses. They don't, where do they, I mean, they can't even take a bus. Where will the money come from? So if you're going to stop commercialization, if you're going to stop revenue in a certain area, and which is arbitrary, which doesn't make, to me it doesn't make sense. I'm sure it makes sense to the government for it to have done it. But at least have a solution, no, for the people. Like these people who went and rebelled or who went and demonstrated. Why was proper answers not given to them? Every state has to look at this eco-sensitive zone and say, what is the point of an eco-sensitive zone? What are we trying to achieve? What is the end game here? And by the way, what is an eco-sensitive zone? It's supposed to be 15 kilometers around, like, if this is your national park, it's supposed to be 15 kilometers around the national park, right? Now, if you've got political influence, the eco-sensitive zone will come like this, it'll come like this, it'll touch the park, that fellow will build a lodge over here, it'll go back up again. So who is it affecting? It's affecting the poor. Now, if you come up with the this is another issue which some extremists might pull up and say, see, they're not giving you basic needs. I will give it to you. And again, we've lost villages to Maoism.
So you're talking about the capitalist class.
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole thing is becoming too capitalist for me, under the guise of something or the other. I believe that we should include the villagers within 15 kilometers, make them part of administration of the forest, of that area, and get solutions from them. Not cut them out. Not say, no, we won't give you any commercial licenses, get lost, we don't know where you're going to get your food from. Where will they go? They'll go kill your tiger, They'll go cut your wood, and then they'll become smugglers and poachers. They'll be running from the rest of their life from the law. For what? So think about it. If you're going to come up with an eco-sensitive zone, have solutions for those people in place before you come up with such a law. It's certainly not conservation.
Tell me about the personal work. Tell me about the individual work that you currently do and what you have already done in this towards conservation. And after that, I would like to ask you a question about tourism, a subject that I brought up earlier. So let's first listen to what you have to say about your private efforts.
All right. So what happened when I moved away from cricket, and I come from a family which is where I grew up in the forest. So my heart was always in the forest.
So that was laid back.
All right. So what happened there was that, and in the 80s, we had brilliant officers. We had officers who would allow us to come into the office, sit with them, and throw ideas and discuss it, and asked us, go out and change your life. Go and change the life of these people. And give us the opportunity and the position to do that. Today it doesn't happen. So what happened, we had a brilliant officer. He's retired, of course. Mr. M.K. Appaya, he is one of the nicest people you'll meet and a great officer. Very inclusionary. And he said, Saad, we've got jungle lodges in Kabini. Don't go there because already there's ecotourism happening there. But go into Mangla and go and develop your lodge in Mangla. So I said, sure, sir, but let's first define, like I was telling you, let's first define what the final objective is. What am I going there for? What is going to be the final aim of ours? I'm not going to be able to give revenue to every villager. With 12 rooms or 14 rooms, I can't do that. So then we sat down and we decided that every villager owns like 3 or 4 or 5 acres. So we said that within a period of 20 years, we will change the value of that asset that he owns. So the final objective of ours was to be achieved after 20 years, where we would take a 10,000 acre land and make sure that he can sell it for 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs. Now how was I to do that? So then I came in and I said, I'll use ecotourism to put in feet through the door, feet on the ground, eyeballs on the ground, media will come in, there'll be talk. I wrote Wild Tales from the Wild for that and put a lot of hype around that little valley called Mangla. And today the land is worth 50 or 60 lakhs. So the idea was that if this, like if you were a tribal or if you were a person from a lower caste and you had 4 or 5 acres which had been given to you by government or whatever, you could sell it at the end of 20 years and move to near Mysore or move to a city. Because the value of your land then would be equivalent. So that was the main objective. And then as we were going through that objective, conservation sort of happened along the way. It doesn't happen straight away. So how do you address the issue of caste? In a village, we just don't want to talk about it. First, you've got to get into the house. First, you've got to get the confidence of every person. So when I open my mouth and I say, no, that's not correct, you must allow my manager into your house. And give my manager the confidence to go into the upper caste house. So how do you get to that position? It takes 10 years, 20 years just to get to that position. And sometimes at the end of that, you still fail. Whilst I might not have failed in Kabini, but I certainly in Bandipur, a lot of my objectives I was not able to meet because of these areas. But at least we understood that conflicts are inherent and conservation should address every single issue. And then we can only do that much. And then we go to the government and say, sir, social welfare department, forest department, revenue department, we need to change the way we look. We need to change the way we address these issues. Revenue department will change straight away. Revenue department is amazing. Social welfare department, fisheries department is so fantastic, I can't tell you. But the exclusionary outlook of the forest department, I couldn't change. Not one single officer I could change.
So you said conservation is a gradual thing, but how gradual is that? Because we see a lot of people and we see the country paying a huge price for these delays. in understanding what is conservation. Especially you look at places where, again, I'm coming to tourism not for other purposes, but even for religious purposes. For instance, in the Himalayas, there are a lot of shrines which are also home to a lot of wonderful flora and fauna. And there you go in the name of promoting religious tourism, and also which in another way means, making a lot of money out of it. So people encourage or promote, and it becomes so rampant that finally you have disasters like the one that's happening in Joshimath and what had happened before in Kedarnath. How do you address this issue? How do you, the eyes are shut. How do we change this?
No, so the answer rests simply and solely in conservation. If you had a conservation law which would look at the Himalayas as an ecosystem, and it would then turn around and tell the chief ministers and the different departments in that area, it would put certain limitations, it would put certain fundamentals in place and say this is how far you can go and this is how far you can. I understand that you need revenue. Revenue is required for the local people to earn their trust, to earn their livelihood. Everything is required. Revenue is required. Tourism is the only tool which normally does not take anything. It only gives back. Like when I do wildlife tourism in Bandipur or in Kabini, I'm taking nothing from the forest. Nothing at all. The tigers will mate next to my car. Elephants will mate. Leopards will mate. They will hunt next day. Sometimes they'll use the car to hunt. So to say that tourism inhibits wildlife is wrong. Tourism, excess tourism, or tourism which is uncontrolled, or tourism which is actually abusing the ecosystem like is happening up maybe in the north. I don't know the north very well.
I'm talking about the injudicious, very illegal use of whatever resources that we
Because
have.
limitations have not been set. Because there is no conservation boss sitting on your head saying, no, we should think about the fish, we should think about this, we should think about the ecosystem, we should think about the hillsides, we should think about the trees, we should think about the frogs and the birds and the... No, there's no one to say that. Or you have your family, we should think about your family, let's find them a revenue system which is not dependent on forest produce. Let's think of, or give you a solution for your cattle. Where are they going to go and graze? So if you get what I'm saying? I'm saying if you take every living creature and if you find a win-win solution for that, you will come to a solution where I can only have 100 houses here. So in this temple up on this hill or this mosque over here, I cannot allow more than 1,000 people. That formula then will come to you from within the system. But if you don't have a system,
my question is, if you start caring about each and every organism in this world, can you afford to be a vegan? Can you afford to be a vegan? Because finally, for carrots and apples that are grown in the fields, you are destroying so much of life.
yeah, sure. Like milk. How do you think milk comes? So when you actually start thinking on these lines, milk comes from a huge trauma that is given to the calf and the mother. Every one of us here has grown up on that milk. Did we question it? No, why not? Mindset. So everything can be taken care of if our mindset changes. If we are willing to allow sacrifice, understand and accept that yes, there will be certain casualties of war, meaning that if I need to survive, I might need to do this. Like if you're going to go from, you can be the most die-hard conservationist in the world. If you drive from here to Bangalore, you will kill how many millions of insects? Butterflies and dragonflies and flies and ants. You don't see them, so it doesn't matter. But you will be, these are all casualties of war. I mean, these are all, this is going to happen.
Yeah. So what are your views on what the government calls reforestation, which also includes, getting plants and species from that grow typically in continents so far, and the kind of things that you can call as alien or invasive species, and bringing in and cultivating here.
If you look at evolution, it's all invasionary species. Evolution is only about a stronger species coming in. Homo sapiens. We literally destroyed the Neanderthals, Homo erectus. We wiped them out. I mean, like 2% of our blood is Neanderthal. But they couldn't survive the Homo sapien. So should we have evolved? We did. So any strong species that comes in on its own should definitely be allowed. But any species that is brought in by humans without understanding the cause and effect is really so harmful, I can't tell you. I must tell you something very interesting here. There's a beautiful book, it's on trees, the Secret Lives of Trees. You must read it. What it says is that if you allow a jungle to remain, and that national park there, which has got maybe 1,000-year-old forest, those trees are communicating with each other. So if a tree maybe 500 yards there is unwell and it needs certain minerals, all the trees are getting together and supplying minerals to that tree through the root system. It is fascinating. But the moment humans come in, that communication between trees stops. Isn't that an answer in itself? That the most invasive species is the Homo sapien, is us. Now, how are we going? First, we need to understand how we're destroying this world. Like you were saying the other time when we were discussing this. Global warming. You know, what's happening to the climate, what's happening to the rising seas, or etc., etc., etc. Why is that happening? It's because we have become so capitalistic, like again, like what you said earlier, that we've lost connect with Mother Earth. And she will strike back. At the end of the day, Earth, the Mother Earth will win.
So you believe in that revenge of nature or revenge of Mother Earth?
No, it's not revenge. It's just, I think the way the Almighty has sort of structured that if there is abuse, there'll be that much abuse. At the end of the day, there'll be a tsunami or there'll be a virus or there'll be something or the other which is going to wipe you out. But we have really, really, really destroyed this world and we are not even thinking of putting it right. We are not thinking conservation. Conservation means that you think on the lines of putting this world right. You're not thinking. So there's going to be zero conservation. There's going to be protection. There's going to be this, I will bless you and I will protect this and you will have 10 tigers. No, but I also want 200 of this and 300 of this and I also want my villagers to be happy and I also want this. No.
But are there rays of hope? Is there some kind of a pushback happening? I'm not talking about, some kind of an avatar that says, we died for your sins, I died for your sins or something like that, but some kind of noise coming from somewhere, some kind of voices from, even through art, films or somewhere that you think is making some kind of a change?
No, this is my point with you. Is that noise is not coming because the mindsets of all of us has been clouded. They've been shifted, they've been moved into a direction where that noise will not even start. I don't think that was intentional. I think it just so happened that this whole issue of protection came in, this whole the laws came in, the exclusionary sort of attitudes came in, and it just pushed everything into an area where conservation was forgotten. The definition of conservation being a win-win solution was completely lost. And now it's, I did this. What have you done? Oh, I have done this fantastic work. Well, where is the conservation in that? What's the end game in that? That whole process, that thinking is not there.
Yeah, now you're aware of politics in the South and efforts by various governments to bring in a lot of changes, including, development initiatives like fast trains and, super highways or super fast highways or things like that. So this again has a correlation with the mindset that people have that you were talking about. That even in a progressive state like Kerala, they keep talking about high-speed K train, and also about huge highways. So, these are useful, but where do we draw the line? How do we do that balancing act?
No, it's required. Please don't get me wrong. High-speed trains are required, highways are required. Why? Because high-speed trains and highways will bring in investment, will bring in revenue. If your system is there to ensure that that revenue flows down to the people who actually need it, then you've got a win-win situation. But if you don't have that, then you're in trouble because then it become a capitalistic society where 2% of our wealth will go back to 2% of those people. So yes, by all means, invest. You have to invest in infrastructure. You have to open up even the villagers, even the inside villagers, so that they can then get access to revenue or trading or manufacturing or tourism or whatever, or agriculture or better agriculture. So that is required. But the final objective, the final aim should be that the benefit has to go to those people. Because without the benefit going to them, it's all a lie, it's all a hoax.
But are we doing anything towards monetizing the traditional know-how, the knowledge that they have about the forest, about the herb medicine? Are we trying to tap into whatever is possible at the moment, or do you plan to launch something, or at least in a small scale, something of the sort?
I think there are NGOs who are doing that. I think, I don't know, I think there are some governments also, like the village panchayat of my village has actually taken lantana and has got the tribes to work with lantana and make furniture. So there's a lot of progressive development that is taking place, because some people, and it takes like maybe 1 out of 10 officials to understand that it's required. So there is, but it's not enough. So to answer your question, yes, there is development and there is hope in that area that yes, it can come up, but that it needs to come up much faster if we need to make a difference to our country.
So, as a person who now belongs to the wild, do you have any objection to being called a person who belongs to the wild, or no? So, so as someone who lives close to nature, how do you see, or do you sense a certain kind of communication that is possible between humans and other beings around?
Absolutely.
How is it possible? Can you explain?
I think COVID was an eye-opener for all of us. We didn't understand the sort of, because I spent 2 years through COVID, I spent in the Serengeti. And I was with the wilderness, and I saw a part of the wilderness which I would never have seen again before. So that's the downside of tourism again. But the communication that happened between the animals and us, the communication that happens between the animals and other animals and within their own structures, is amazing. Like when you come home in Bandipur, there is a lot of elephant movement. I live on a hill, but below the hill, nothing comes on the hill because there's no feed. But below the hill, there's a lot of elephant movement. So I am the only one in the valley which is kept like a 20-foot gap between in my land for the elephants to move across from left to right. My fence is never touched. But all the other people who have not given that gap or that pathway for the elephant to move, their fences are destroyed, their gates are broken. And obviously this is a communication that is taking place, saying
That's very interesting.
they're saying that, just give us a path. We're not asking for much. I'm trying to tell the villagers this, like recycling of bore wells. You're putting in 2 or 3 crops every year. That land can't, that underground water can't take that. Recycle, please recycle. They don't understand that. Similarly with animals, they don't understand that an elephant can actually think and find a path through. So I take the villagers actually to my place and say, see, he's never broken my fence. Never. Since I've been there for like so many years. And then they say yes, but nothing happens. So there is huge communication that is happening. Elephants and tigers are coming out of the forest. They are interacting more with humanity. You won't even know a tiger's walked past you sometimes.
Has it happened to you?
Hundreds of times. You won't even know that the animal is there because he's not after you. He knows that you're there. And so 300-400 years ago, we knew how to live with them. Now we've just forgotten.
So, what about, elephants? When you talk about elephants, and then you seem to have a special liking for elephants because they have a high level of emotional quotient, also maybe perhaps IQ. So, what do you think of these elephants that are used for ceremonies and that are always chained and used for certain kind of ornament, embellishment of certain festivals and things like that? What do you think we need to stop that at the earliest?
No, I think if there is respect If there is mutual trust, it develops into love. I mean, your dog loves you. Your dog loves you, he'll die for you. Cats love you, your cats love you.
But with cats, I don't know, but with dogs.
No, cats are literally as like dogs. Your elephants are maybe 10 steps higher because of their intellect. They love you
Because
to
of
death.
the
Intellect.
Oh,
They're just
yeah.
so intelligent, they're so social, their bonding, their social bonding structures are so strong. Remember, the female elephant keeps the calf inside for 22 months. We only, our ladies,
9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
So that bond is far, far stronger. So when they come into a bond with humans, it's a beautiful bond. But if it gets abused, then you find the elephant going a little crazy. He might even kill the mahout, he might go a little lopsided, he might attack a few cars and all that. But so every relationship that you have between human to human, you might find someone murdering someone. You'll accept that. I mean, you throw him in jail. But if an elephant does that, you won't accept that because you don't understand the psyche of the elephant. But if you give enough love and affection, I think the elephants love being with us.
I think India is one of the first countries to have tamed elephant. That's what they claim. Do you believe that? And why did that happen? Now, why did Indians could do that and not others?
Hannibal? But he took Indian elephants. But no, listen, I think it was because of war. Elephants would win you the war. And therefore any state, any royalty state or monarchy that was there.
Porus, who fought Alexander, he used elephants.
Porus used elephants. No, all of them. All the states used elephants. And therefore, for the states that were using elephants, it was very important that they have forests to feed the elephants and to capture wild elephants. So elephants would win you a war. So elephants were very integral to the king in those days, and therefore they were given very special status, and they were looked after very well.